Hey guys, how are you? We have a really interesting manga today. In a world born from chaos and corruption, one man was reborn inside an R-rated 18-plus RPG where death isn't just game over. It's total ruin. But instead of running, he embraced the pain. They called him insane, the freak who laughs at death. Yet with every scar, he inched closer to the ultimate goal, becoming the strongest being this twisted world has ever seen. The story begins. Enjoy. The sign on the building reads, "Welcome to the Adventurers Guild." The main character, named Halbert, goes inside. Girls are standing by the bulletin board, carefully studying the assignments. Their open and tight-fitting costumes flatter their figures. The male visitors can't take their eyes off them, literally devouring the women with their gaze. At the counter, a young man flirts with an employee, who smiles sweetly in response to his words. Next to them, an exhausted girl, looking quite worn out, is leaning against the wall. She has a heavy, tired look in her eyes. Halbert politely calls out to the employee. Distracted from her pleasant conversation, she greets the newcomer with a smile and asks how she can help him. Instead of answering, MC slips a card through the window, and the girl cannot hide her surprise. Halbert looks up at her anxiously and asks what's wrong. The employee replies awkwardly that everything is fine and asks if the main character will be going back to the dungeon today. He briefly agrees. The girl reminds him to take care of himself and says goodbye. Thanking her over his shoulder, the main character heads for the exit. Halbert is almost out of the building when the employee who served him bursts into tears. With a trembling voice, she confesses to her partner that she is terribly nervous. The other employee smiles encouragingly, pats the girl on the shoulder, and tells her that she did a great job. The first employee, with light hair, asks if there are various unpleasant rumors circulating about the main character. Her dark-haired colleague's expression changes, and she replies that this is indeed the case. The MC is called the Black Madman Halbert. People say that while fighting the monster, the main character laughed wildly, and after defeating the creature, he continued to strike the already dead body of the monster over and over again. The dark-haired employee adds that if you look Halbert in the eye, he will attack you, and if you say his name in the middle of the night, you will be cursed forever. The light-haired girl screams in horror that in that case, the MC is a monster himself. However, she thinks about it and admits that Halbert behaved very politely and even intelligently. Her interlocutor replies that this is what makes him so scary. Halbert was labeled a madman immediately after his debut as an adventurer. The reason for this attitude was the MC's inadequacy. But at the same time, Halbert successfully manages to pretend to be a normal person. The blonde employee asks suspiciously what is wrong with this guy. Her interlocutor remarks that normal people do not wander around dungeons in proud solitude all day long. In addition, the main character sets new leveling records every day. The blonde girl asks fearfully, "What is an MC anyway?" Meanwhile, Halbert, unaware that he has become the subject of such an enthusiastic conversation, carefully examines his status. He notes with satisfaction that he has already reached level 8. Casually tossing the card into his pants pocket, he decides to stick to his plan, which is to hold out until level 10 with his starting equipment. With a crazy smile on his face, Halbert rushes into the dungeon with his weapon in hand. He immediately finds a goblin from which he wants to gain experience. Without wasting a second, the main character strikes the monster, which doesn't have time to understand what's happening. The goblin squeals, and something oozes from its eye. Halbert is disappointed that he cannot take out all of his opponent's health in one attack. The monster catches the drop that has leaked from his eye and pounces on Halbert. Halbert thoughtfully concludes that in a previous life, he would have died from such a blow. But his eyes light up with a crazy fire again, and he notices that as long as there is even a drop of HP left, the system absorbs all the pain. The goblin looks at him in bewilderment. Then, with a growl, he lunges at his opponent again. The enemy fights tirelessly, but Halbert just smiles. The main character says sarcastically that nothing will work. The MC adds mockingly that it's as if he's being tickled by electricity. Halbert looms over the exhausted goblin. He says that he seems to have chosen too weak an opponent, some pathetic monster on the upper level. The main character adds that even if it wanted to, the monster couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Halbert shouts with satisfaction, saying how much he likes the feeling of being stronger. With one blow, he cuts off the goblin's head. Blood spatters from the monster's head. The main character discovers with regret that his loot is just a handful of copper coins. He decides to check his health. His eyes widen in horror. Halbert realizes that he has been showing off all this time for nothing because his HP has been reduced by half. He has no bonuses or skills. The MC is convinced once again that the first thing he needs to do is get a character class. As the main character picks up the coins, he notices that everything in this world is really like in a game. He only has to squint a little to see how much health he has left. In addition, the inhabitants here behave just like real people. Halbert wonders why he ended up in this world in the first place. A few months ago, a terrifying scream pierced the quiet, peaceful house. The main character doesn't understand what is happening. The landlady rushes over and starts banging on the door, trying to find out what happened. Halbert looks at her in confusion and apologizes, saying that he just woke up. The woman says irritably that he is disturbing people's rest. The main character sheepishly remarks that he has a couple of questions. He wants to know what this place is and who he is. The hostess nervously asks if he has really just woken up. Nevertheless, she explains that they are in the Golden Dawn Tavern, located in the town of Socchinoke. The guy's name is Halbert, and he is an adventurer. The woman adds that all this is indicated on his status card. Just in case, she makes sure that the main character is in perfect health, which means he is definitely not sick. The landlady slams the door shut, sending the guy to wash up and then to the dungeon. Standing frozen in the same spot, the main character wonders if this is a city in Japan. The name seems vaguely familiar to him, as does the dungeon. Then it dawns on him that this is the adventure city of Socchinoke. Halbert realizes that he has ended up in the world of a nasty game called Voices of Moans. It is a well-known hardcore errata project where men and women are equal. He guesses that Halbert is the name of his character. Jumping up excitedly, the main character reasons aloud that if all this is not a dream, then he has undergone Sky reincarnation. Clutching his head, Halbert adds that this is the worst possible outcome because he has ended up in an Eroge game where anything goes. In despair, he bangs his hand on the floor with all his might. The MC shouts that he cannot stay in such a terrible world and that he needs to return home. The hostess barks at Halbert to shut up immediately, and he apologizes. No matter how much the main character thinks about it, he cannot come up with a way to get back to his own world. MC begins to realize that it is simply impossible, especially now that he looks different from his previous life. He can't even return to the city where Halbert is from. The main character simply knows nothing about his past. He sighs heavily. If the MC gives up on the dungeon, the whole world will perish because that is the plot of the game. After a moment of silence, the main character makes a decision. Clenching his fist triumphantly, he shouts that since he has nowhere to run, he will fight. He has unlocked all the achievements in the original game, including defeating all monsters and obtaining all items. So if he really did end up in this world, his knowledge would allow him to level up very quickly. Halbert walks resolutely toward the door. He is not going to just wait for death. He pulls the handle. The main character wants to conquer this world. At the moment, Halbert, having collected coins, delves deeper into the dungeon. He recalls that his first battle with the goblins was so unsuccessful that he had to flee from a shameful defeat. On the other hand, before entering the game, the main character had never fought before. He particularly likes the automatic translation and HP system in this world. Something catches his attention, and Halbert quickly raises his head, instantly becoming serious. He spots another goblin and rushes at the poor creature, dreaming of money and experience points. Half a day later, the main character enters the Traveler's Guild building. A bored employee sits behind the counter, propping his head up with his hand. He glances at the guy who just walked in. The guy smiles friendly, says hello, and hands over his card. The protagonist says he would like to request a class. Upon learning that his name is Halbert, the man looks at him in amazement. He realizes that this is the very same Black Madman. Pulling himself out of his thoughts, the employee gets to work. He wonders why the main character approached him and not the nearest registration desk. Behind it stands the blonde girl who served Halbert in the morning, gazing dreamily at the MC. The main character keeps his eyes on the employee. For the first time since arriving in this world, he has managed to meet a character from a game. However, the man does not behave as friendly as in the original. Halbert is going to choose the swordsman class from the available options. This class is based on attack. It has access to many combat skills and AoE attacks, but it consumes a lot of health points. Therefore, the swordsman class is not suitable for every player. The main character is so absorbed in his observations. He approaches the employee closely, staring at him unceremoniously. He remarks aloud that the man seems younger than in the game. The man tries not to pay attention to this, deciding that the MC just has such tendencies. The employee informs him that his level 10 qualification has been confirmed. Halbert scratches the back of his head in confusion. It dawns on him that he entered the game before the original story began and therefore does not recognize anyone. The employee asks what class the main character will choose. He confidently replies that he wants to take the swordsman class. The man says he will register his swordsman class and set knight as his subclass. Halbert looks at him in amazement. He nervously asks not to set any subclass yet, to the surprise of the employee. The main character knows very well that with 2 classes, the leveling speed slows down. Moreover, Halbert knows that swordsman and knight are a bad combination. He decides that the employee is an amateur. Then the MC remembers that the original story has not yet begun, which means that the era of adventurers is just beginning. There is simply no useful information in this world yet. Halbert smiles predatorily. He has a complete set of knowledge. A couple people pass by him. The girl desperately asks her companion not to stare so openly at the black madman. The main character chuckles. He mentally decides to use the information he knows with caution. He wants to restrain himself. The employee explains that the swordsman class relies on damage, and to increase survivability, he should also take a knight. Halbert says he can handle it this way, because on the upper floors he can withstand about 5 hits. With a sweet smile, the MC adds that the senior, i.e., the training character, has already told him everything. He asks to be given the swordsman class. His partner encourages the exhausted employee, who says he is terribly tired. Now he understands why Halbert is called crazy. The man wonders what the main character considers his life to be. Everyone knows that losing health points is a countdown to death. Even small children know this very well. If health is halved, even an adult can lose their mind. And if health points are less than 20%, even complete sinners will cry and beg for mercy. That's why all adventurers strive to form groups, even though they will gain less experience. It is precisely to ensure a reserve of life that you need to take the knight subclass, even at the cost of experience. This increases and develops defense characteristics. Equipment is no less important, and armor should always be a priority. Even seasoned adventurers take days off to maintain their strength and health. The employee raises her finger instructively and reminds him that avoiding damage is the basis of all adventurers, and the man agrees with her. He recalls that Halbert goes to the dungeons every day and always uses only free healing potions from a guild. His interlocutor notes that these elixirs are almost useless, like mana talismans, which are really just pretty trinkets. The employee adds that the main character has risked his life many times, depleting his vitality and energy. No one else could have raised their level like that, but he succeeded. The man finds this very suspicious, but as a guild member, he has no intention of sticking his nose into other people's business. He decides that Halbert has chosen the bloody path and wonders what deep darkness dwells within him. Although the main character has been mistakenly given the nickname Black Madman, over time, this will become true for him. In this world, common sense is turned upside down. Halbert, leaving the building, happily waves his sword. He finds that he is getting better and better, and believes that it is all thanks to the power of the swordsman. Continuing to play with his weapon, the main character decides to work hard in the dungeon the next day. Behind him, 2 women whisper cautiously, glancing at the MC, but Halbert has no idea what rumors are circulating about him. The city of Meikyuu is so named because it is here that crowds of adventure seekers gather. The city is located directly above the dungeon, which is known to be home to an ancient evil. Meikyuu is a state consisting of a single city built around the Adventurers Guild building. A satisfied Halbert descends the stairs into the dungeon. After he received the swordsman class, he spent all his money on the best weapon available at the beginning of the game. With such a powerful sword, he will be able to accumulate experience points much faster. Halbert pauses before the entrance to the dungeon. No matter how many times he has seen these gates, they still amaze him. The entrance seems majestic and frightening at the same time. Halbert slowly reaches out and touches the surface of the gate with his palm. A ripple seems to pass through it, and the passage gradually opens. The main character resolutely heads inside. Today, he is determined to do a good job. He carefully passes through the portal and finds himself on the other side. The MC calmly walks through the dungeon. Noticing a goblin ahead, Halbert breaks into a smile. Raising his weapon above his head, he sneaks up on the monster from behind and jumps on it. The main character is eager to gain experience. This time, he kills the goblin with one blow, slashing its throat, from which blood begins to spurt like a fountain. Halbert looks at his fist with satisfaction. He is glad that he is now able to defeat a monster with a single attack. The MC also notices that he has become more agile, and even walking no longer tires him. The main character smiles broadly and predatorily. He is confident that it will now be much easier for him to gain experience points. Halbert can't wait to collect even more money. A few hours later, Halbert excitedly reaches the 3rd floor and found himself surrounded by goblins. They stare at him grimly, gradually closing the distance. The main character only grips his sword tighter. He is not afraid in the slightest. Halbert is not bothered by the monster's attempt to overwhelm him with their numerical superiority. The MC took his weapon out of its sheath. Halbert had anticipated the goblin's behavior. With a smooth, sweeping motion, he cut down the creatures surrounding him. After the attack, Halbert sheathes his sword. The main character is pleased that he was able to test his sword's AoE attack. However, he feels that he is more like a samurai than a swordsman. The MC even thanks the goblins for serving as his test subjects. He is surprised to notice that there is one survivor among the pile of dead monsters. Halbert recalls that in the game, an area attack was directed at all enemies at once, but in reality, it seems that things don't work quite that way. The main character decides that all this still needs to be tested and retested. Along the way, he pierces the sword of the surviving goblin. Halbert thinks that after 7 hits, he'll have to drink a potion, because each attack takes away 10% of his health points. When MC was a newbie, he got potions for free, but now he'll have to pay for them. Since he can't do without them, the main character will have to spend money anyway. Halbert is sure that this is not so bad, because he can easily earn the necessary amount. He rushes at the next group of goblins and cuts them down with his sword. Then it's time to drink an elixir to restore his health. Halbert decides to think positively, otherwise he simply won't survive. The main character exclaims that this world has the best dungeons, which are hard to find in Japan. He convinces himself of this. The MC moves deeper into the dungeon when suddenly something catches his attention. There's a chest in the cave, possibly containing treasure. Halbert is itching to open it, but he stops himself. First, he needs to come up with a safe way to do it, because there could be a trap inside, a teleport to an unknown location, or simply explosives. The main character wonders whether he should take the Hunter subclass early, because then he will gain useful skills for dealing with traps. However, if he does so, he will not be able to reach the maximum level of swordsman for a long time. Halbert sighs heavily. It seems at this time he will have to leave, but he is still stifled by envy. Opening a chest always brings a pleasant feeling of anticipation and excitement. The main character's blood begins to boil because it is impossible to predict what is hidden inside. It could be something pleasant, or it could be a complete disappointment. The MC desperately wants to experience this thrill. Halbert feels torn apart. On the one hand, he understands that he cannot take such a risk, but on the other hand, the MC cannot constantly restrain his desire to open the chest. The main character makes a decision. It's time to create a team. There's no other way. Since this world is in the game Voices of Moans, the partners are usually purchased slaves. But Halbert, as a modern man, is repulsed by the very idea of slavery. The main character is lucky. Unlike in the game, information about recruitment for the squad can be found on the bulletin board. All that remains is for the MC to negotiate with someone. The first man Halbert approaches says in a trembling voice that he is not suitable and suggests that the MC look for someone else. The members of another squad, timidly glancing at each other, nervously inform him that they have just found a partner. The girl whom the MC asked falls to her knees and, apologizing, admits that she's not at the right level. Halbert decides that he was wrong to turn to experienced adventurers while in the process of leveling up. It occurs to him to look for partners who are around his level. He asks the girl if she is looking for a group member. She recoils from him in fear. Her companion shields her and quickly says that the MC is too good for them. The main character cannot understand what is going on. He wonders what he did wrong. Maybe he showed himself to be too weak. Halbert thinks he chose the wrong moment. The girls ask plaintively if they can leave now. Then they get really scared because the main character suddenly bursts out laughing. He decides that now he has no choice. He will have to assemble a team of slaves, because there is no other way. Deep in thought, Halbert steps into the mini-skage shopping district. He still can't decide whether to take a slave or not, because even if he goes hunting alone, it will still be difficult. The main character is so preoccupied with his thoughts that he doesn't even notice one of the passers-by looking back at him. The MC also doesn't know who to choose. He doesn't want a male slave, but he's not eager to invite a girl to join the team either. In despair, Halbert pulls at his hair. Everything is much more complicated than in the game, and this upsets him. He also simply cannot imagine how it is possible to treat a living person like a pet. But then the MC has a sudden idea. If he takes a monster as a slave, he won't have to struggle with his conscience. At the very edge of the commercial district is a slave market. Tortured and beaten slaves are kept in cages, several people to a cage. The owner of this place is just finishing a conversation with his client. Suddenly, his subordinate bursts into his office. From the doorway, he excitedly reports that his boss was right. The black madman himself has undoubtedly come to visit them. The host remarks with dissatisfaction that Halbert arrived later than he had expected, but immediately decides that this is an acceptable error. He orders his subordinate to bring the guest to him with all due honors. The boss himself is going to talk to the main character. His employee immediately sets off to carry out the order. The boss has heard about the black madman. As a newcomer, Halbert managed to complete a journey that takes others 3 months in just 1 week. In addition, the MC has abandoned the knight subclass. From this, the boss concludes that the main character has put all his strength into attack, and now any defense is no obstacle to him, since the MC now has maximum damage. And all this is only for the sake of power. The master admiringly acknowledges that the guy is a real madman, but only an amateur would consider him suicidal. They say that Halbert always carries healing potions with him and makes sure to replenish his supply. In addition, he possesses as many as 3 crystals for teleportation from the dungeon, which is an expensive pleasure. The boss is sure that the main character is driven by an incredibly strong desire to return alive at all costs. Heading down the corridor to the meeting, the boss decides that even if Halbert ended up in hell, he would overcome all trials and come out alive for the sake of gaining power. The boss has reliable information about the MC from the guild. The guy desperately craves power. He has an inappropriate aggression towards monsters, and no one has ever met the senior who brought him. The boss is sure that the main character isn't crazy at all, but a real avenger. The reason his mentor has never been seen is that she is dead. Halbert is completely devoid of fear and shame, because all that remains inside him is vengeance directed at the monsters from the dungeon. The boss understands that someone who has lost a truly dear person will no longer want to endure the grief of loss. That is why, having lost his former friends, the MC does not seek new companions. Having come to these conclusions, the boss enters the room where Halbert is already waiting for him. Halbert wants to get straight to the point. He states outright that he needs slaves. Thoughts flash through the boss's mind. The MC is looking for slaves as cannon fodder, which means he will most likely want to take the monsters he hates so much. The master asks aloud if he has understood correctly that the main character wants to take monster slaves and use them for hunting in the dungeon. Halbert is shocked by his interlocutor's insight. He doesn't understand how he guessed, and wonders if he himself looks like someone who can't get along with others. The MC replies that the boss is absolutely right and asks what he can offer. The owner decides that the main character is going to take out his anger on his future slaves, which means he will change slaves often. He is sure that he has found the perfect customer. The boss advises the guy to take goblins. He promises to give a discount if the MC takes 10 at once. Halbert politely declines, saying that 1 is enough for him. After all, he just needs to disable the traps, especially since there could be a maximum of 6 people in a party in the game. The MC can't believe that the boss is really selling goblins. The main character's response shocks the owner. He decides that the guy is going to make the slave suffer for 10 people. The man notes that 1 slave may not last long and asks if that is okay with Halbert. He replies cheerfully that this suits him just fine. First, he is not going to drive the slave to death. And second, the more members there are in the team, the more experience will be shared. The boss can't believe his ears. He is sure that the MC is truly insane if he's going to treat his slave. The master finds that Halbert is indeed unlike anyone else. Others mainly choose slaves of the opposite sex to satisfy their base desires. The boss believes that in this situation, it is necessary to focus on quality rather than quantity. Clearing his throat, he gets up from his seat and triumphantly brings a cage with a small creature into the room. The surprised protagonist looks inside and asks if it is a gnome. The master confirms the MC's guess with a satisfied smile. A gnome is capable of burying a person alive in the ground. It is a very vicious and cruel monster ready to kill. Those unfortunate souls who were fooled by the creature's cute appearance paid with their lives, slowly decomposing. They served as fertilizer for the garden beds. The number of victims at the hands of gnomes is impossible to count. The boss, standing next to Halbert, explains that although the creature looks fragile, it is actually very strong. It costs a lot, but for good reason. If you bury the monster in the ground overnight, all its wounds will heal, the perfect option if you want to keep it as a slave for longer. Ignoring the last remark, the main character recalls that gnomes are also skilled craftsmen, capable of creating various items. The MC is confident that the monster will be quite suitable for disarming traps. Halbert agrees. He and the owner seal the deal with a handshake. The latter expresses his hope that they will continue to work together in the future. Back in his room, the main character sits the gnome on the table. He still can't imagine that ordinary monsters are sold as slaves. His purchase silently stares at the MC. The protagonist leans closer to the creature and remarks that everything is for the best. He hopes that they will work well together. Silence is his only response. This annoys Halbert. He wonders why the gnome is not responding and wonders if they will be able to communicate normally at all. These creatures' faces are only used to lure people in, so they do not express any emotions. Even though the gnome remains silent. Mentally, she is amazed at the audacity of humans. Ordinary prey dares to act important. The monster notices that all she has to do is pretend to be friendly, and naive humans are instantly taken in. She is convinced that they are simply inferior, pathetic creatures. Halbert looks closely at the gnome and sees a collar of submission worn on the monster's head. This item forces it to obey any orders from its owner. The gnome is sure that she will be able to trick the MC and make him remove the collar from her. After that, terrible revenge will await him. The main character decides to give it a try. He forbids the monster from harming him or any of the people, except in cases of self-defense. The stone glows, which means the command has worked. Since the gnome's face shows no emotion, Halbert does not understand whether the command has been received. He thinks he did not formulate the order clearly enough. The monster is mentally outraged by the audacity of the MC, who has decided to boss around the emissaries of the earth. She believes that she will definitely be able to find a loophole and get out of this situation. The main character, meanwhile, begins to list what is forbidden to do. You cannot mold clay on a person's face to suffocate them, immobilize them with mud, bury people alive, or use them as fertilizer. The gnome panics, realizing with horror that her plans will not work now. She wonders what kind of person she has ended up with. The MC used the advice from the game and gave detailed orders, but received no response. He decides that for safety's sake, he will have to take extreme measures and check for himself. Grabbing the gnome, Halbert heads for the wasteland, where no one is likely to disturb them. He puts the monster on the ground. He asks it not to move. The MC warns that he is about to cut the creature in half. He adds that he is not serious. But the threats still have no effect. The gnome stares stubbornly into the void. Privately, however, she is terrified, convinced that the main character has simply lost his mind. Halbert draws his sword. He plans to prove that he is not making empty threats. The MC is going to use the most powerful skill available to him right now, which, however, will take away 30% of his health. The gnome hopes he is just joking, but his expressionless gaze frightens her. The MC uses a technique called the absolute sword, despite the fact that not a single muscle of the monster twitches. Mentally, he is hysterical, fearing that he is about to die. Halbert cuts a deep furrow right in front of the gnome. He notices with confusion that there is still no reaction and decides to strike for real. The creature has no desire to die like this. Then the MC notices how much the dwarf is trembling and realizes that she is obeying the order not to move. The main character thinks that his slave simply did not know how to react. She believes that Halbert has truly gone mad. However, if she goes against him, the MC will surely crush her like a fly. The main character tells the gnome to nod her head if she understands everything, and if not, to shake her head from side to side. He asks if everything is clear to her. She nods vigorously. Mentally, she is ready to accept Halbert as her master, as long as he doesn't kill her. Halbert scratches the back of his head, thinking that he is to blame for their unsuccessful communication. He grabs the dwarf by her clothes, and she begs him to stop. But the MC apologizes and stuffs her into his pocket. The main character realizes that he is not an ideal master with a mountain of flaws, but he still counts on his partner. She asks someone to save her while she is shaking in his pocket. In the guild building, Halbert approaches the employee behind the counter again. The dwarf receives the hunter class as his primary class, which the employee informs him of. He adds that now the main character's dwarf will be able to master the skills of this class. The monster stares at him gloomily from the pocket. Halbert thanks him and leaves. The employee wonders why the MC always comes to him when there's such a pretty girl standing next to him. He nervously decides that Halbert really does have completely perverted tastes. The main character rejoices at his huge catch. Decapitated goblin bodies lie around him, still spurting blood. The MC is thrilled that he was able to gain experience, skills, and money. The dwarf recalls how the slave trader secretly called Halbert a madman. She cautiously glances at her owner. His face is contorted into a broad smile. He is happy to have obtained rare material. The dwarf decides that the slave market owner was wrong about only one thing. No MC is human. She knows perfectly well that monsters are the top of the food chain here, and everyone else is just pathetic prey. Halbert's eyes light up. He spots a couple of trolls and rushes to attack them, as this is an opportunity to gain new experience points. The poor gnome barely manages to grab his pocket so as not to fall out. She thinks that monsters are just worthless trash to the main character. Halbert, meanwhile, mercilessly pierces the creatures with his sword, ignoring the blood of others that pours over him. His teeth are bared in a frenzied grin. Distracted, he misses a blow with his club. The troll grins smugly, but immediately loses his head. The main character has already gotten used to the pain, reminiscent of an electric shock. It doesn't bother him in the slightest. The MC stretches and announces that he must continue in the same vein, and then he will be able to achieve the title of the strongest. The dwarf's eyes light up. She checks Halbert and finds that he has lost as much as 20% of his health. She is surprised that the MC didn't even flinch, even though fighters with higher resistance would have reacted to such a blow. The dwarf is horrified and decides that the main character is not human, but only pretending to be. In fact, he is some kind of creature that devours monsters. In the near future, MC will become an uncontrollable monster with the title of the strongest. Halbert, who has discovered the chest, interrupts her thoughts. He pulls the gnome out of his pocket and sends her to deal with the trap. She is mentally surprised that she is grateful for the collar of submission. Without it, she could not be a willing slave and would disobey orders, bringing unknown misfortunes upon herself. She has no desire to become prey that will be disposed of without a second thought. While pondering this, she deftly wields a lockpick. Then she gives Halbert a signal, which means that the trap has been neutralized. Halbert, understanding the gnome, smiles eagerly and hurriedly lifts the lid, accidentally dropping the gnome. MC looks into the chest with curiosity. Inside are the hunter's clothes. Halbert knows that such finds are rare at the upper levels, but if they go deeper, it won't be difficult to find such equipment. He pulls out the clothes with satisfaction. He is pleased that he managed to find a rare item in the very first chest. The MC considers this a good start. Pulling out one of the items, the main character throws it to the gnome, advising him to put on, as it will come in handy later. The gnome touches the fabric indifferently. Halbert himself has already put on his new clothes. He watches with delight as the gnome's clothes shrink. Halbert realizes that the items from the dungeon really do adjust to the size of their owner. The gnome gets dressed. Halbert notes that since the system gave her women's clothes, his companion must be a girl. However, he doesn't care much about that. What's more important is that now they're one step closer to becoming the strongest. He bursts into happy laughter, while the dwarf ponders his words in surprise. Does he really want to make her the strongest too? She clenches her fists resolutely. It turns out that if the dwarf is obedient, she will most likely not be killed. She will also be protected from all dangers except one, Halbert himself. He grabs her by the arm. The MC spots the trolls again and can't wait to get more treasure. Several more hours pass. The main character looks around and notes with dissatisfaction that there are fewer and fewer monsters. Then he spots another troll. He rushes after it, but the monster tries with all its might to escape from Halbert. Halbert tries to stop it by shouting. When that doesn't work, the MC uses his second sword technique. He has no intention of letting the troll live. The main character cuts the monster in half. Halbert thoughtfully realizes that more and more monsters are running away as soon as they see him. He remembers that in the game, all he had to do was moan a little and a whole crowd of small creatures would rush in, regardless of the character's level. The MC decides that he has gone a little too far. Then his attention is drawn to a bag that is shaking for some reason. Forgetting where he is, Halbert blames it on his phone ringing, but when he reaches inside, he instantly realizes he's mistaken. He pulls out a trembling gnome. The main character apologizes to her. He asks if everything is okay. She nods eagerly in response, mentally begging him not to kill her. Halbert wonders why the creature is trembling if she is fine, and thinks that it must be due to her physiology. Then hits him. Inspired by the idea, Halbert uses the return crystal, and together with the gnome, he is transported to their room. Once inside the house, MC apologizes to his companion. He thinks she is hungry. She replies to herself that this is not the case at all. Rummaging through his bag, Halbert reminds himself that gnomes absorb nutrients from the ground, just like plants. He pulls out a flower pot and soil for a home garden. With a beaming face, the main character pushes the gnome into the ground. The monster thinks this is very rude. Halbert tells his partner that he is also going to eat and wishes her a good rest. He rushes out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The gnome quietly sobs, begging to be saved. The first thing the poor gnome hears is Halbert's cheerful voice greeting her. The top of the creature's head gradually emerges from the flower pot, and then the creature's body appears completely. The main character looks gloomily at the gnome's indifferent face. Although they have been living together for several months, he still cannot fully understand his companion. Nevertheless, the MC gives the monster a sweet smile. He has some good news that he can't wait to share. The main character clears his throat importantly. He pulls out a prepared firecracker and lights it. At the same time, a happy Halbert announces that he has reached the maximum level of the swordsman class. Confetti fills the room, and the dwarf obediently applauds. The MC thanks his companion for her congratulations and notes that she has become better at body language. The dwarf glares at him in response. She desperately memorized and practiced these gestures just to prolong her existence and not anger her owner. Halbert talks about his plans. He intends to make knight his main class and leave swordsman as a secondary class. The MC adds that this will allow him to defend the gnome from enemy attacks and respond with a counterattack in an instant. The main character makes his partner happy by telling her that her task will be to deal damage using her hunter abilities. After thinking it over, The gnome decides that it's worth it, since her safety will be ensured. She gives a thumbs up to show her agreement. Halbert realizes that she has no objections and suggests moving on to discussing the details. The main character presents two possible options. First, the dwarf is always protected, but she will constantly be on the verge of death. Second, she will have maximum health points, but sometimes the enemy can attack her, which, in the worst case, will be fatal. Halbert asks what she chooses. She falls face down on the table, begging for mercy. The MC continues his reasoning. The first option is a skill called Knight's Spirit, which has a 100% chance of automatically covering an ally, but only when they are on the verge of death. Players have nicknamed this ability Band-Aid. The second option is a combination of the skills Knight's Oath, which protects a partner with a certain probability, and Areas of Protection, which increases that probability. Other users refer to this set as the Combo Shield. The main character cheerfully adds that both options have auto-cover for allies, but Combo Shield does not always work completely. The gnome twitches nervously. Halbert happily announces that he would choose Patch. This would be an advantageous combination, especially when paired with the enhancing skill Life Against Death, which activates when health is low. The gnome mentally interrupts him. She has no desire to be perpetually low on health points, as that means endless torment and suffering. It's not really a choice at all. Now the gnome is finally convinced that the main character is simply insane. Halbert turns around, noticing how much his companion is shaking. He asks in surprise, "Didn't you like the patch?" Although he thinks it would be more interesting that way. The MC agrees to the combo shield. The dwarf nods with a sad look on his face. The main character smiles, but admits to himself that he would still like to try plaster. With this skill, one can be invincible against weak enemies. Halbert grabs the gnome in his fist and happily announces that they are going to the dungeon. He needs to level up his knight to get the skill he needs. The gnome no longer has the strength to worry. The main character cheerfully adds that there is very little left to do. Just defeat 500 monsters, and everything will work out. The companions descend into the dungeon. Behind the main character are a couple of adventurers who don't want to be seen by Halbert. The MC looks around in confusion. He doesn't understand where all the monsters have gone. After all, the main character knows very well that a whole crowd of monsters lives here. Halbert doesn't believe that it's possible to kill all the creatures. But the dwarf knows what's going on. Day after day, they came to this dungeon, hunting like madmen, and that's why all to stay away from them. The main character looks around. He notices that there are almost no other adventurers nearby. The couple behind him pull each other back, trying their best to keep the MC from seeing them. Halbert, however, is not discouraged. He has anticipated this possibility and prepared himself. The main character triumphantly takes out the aromatic bag, a lure that no monster can resist. The MC throws the item on the floor. The trolls, barely sensing the enticing smell, head toward the source of the aroma. With glazed eyes and drooling, the monsters go toward the bait, completely forgetting about Halbert's presence. He exclaims indignantly that the monsters were just hiding. Anticipating his prey, the main character rushes at the trolls, pulling his sword from its sheath as he goes. With a crazed look on his face, the MC cuts down the monsters with wide swings. The gnome doesn't care anymore. She just lies in Halbert's bag with her hands behind her head. The main character notes with disappointment that the small monsters on the upper level now bring almost no experience, just like the monsters at the entrance to the dungeon. MC knows that he has already reached the level required to move on to higher levels. However, first he needs to defeat the boss. Halbert is not worried at all. It will not be difficult for him to defeat the boss due to the difference in levels. Although in another case, he would have had a hard time. The MC already imagines how the boss will tremble and beg to be spared. The main character eagerly awaits the battle, especially if the monster will brag about his abilities afterwards. This amuses Halbert greatly, and the dwarf moves away from him, just in case. The latter reassures him that he is just joking. All the descriptions of this game and its horrors come to mind, from the disgusting scenario to the dirty tricks. The main character tries to appear frivolous in order to simply survive. He needs to raise his fighting spirit, otherwise he will not be able to endure all this. The MC slaps himself on the cheeks to get rid of bad thoughts. Halbert looks back at the gnome, remembering something. He wonders if his companion has a name. She looks at him gloomily, irritably noting to herself that he's a little late to the party. The dwarf shakes his head, and the main character replies that he thought so. He compares the gnome race to ants, shocking his companion. She can't believe that he would so easily equate the great messengers of the earth with some insects. It turns out that the powerful gnomes are no different from stupid insects. Clenching her fists in anger, Halbert's partner tries her best to ignore the MC's words. Suddenly, she realizes that only the earth itself is truly great, and that gnomes only bury humans in order to continue their lineage. Sobbing, the gnome comes to the conclusion that her race was created to serve the earth. Ironically, she only realized this after becoming a slave, although, come to think of it, she had been a slave since birth. Halbert's cheerful cry upon seeing the monster distracts the gnome from her bitter thoughts. With a broad smile, he decapitates the troll. The unfortunate companion of the MC is only surprised by the sudden change in atmosphere. Only then does the main character notice his companion's depressed state. He asks her what's wrong, and, placing the dwarf on his palm, he asks if she wants a name. She convinces herself that she was just surprised, not scared at all. Suddenly, the gnome remembers that people become attached to the creatures they name themselves. Deciding that this will surely save her from a terrible death, MC's companion graciously accepts the name Lucy. Halbert says he is counting on his companion. She notices that the MC is more decent than he seemed at first glance. She did not even expect that. The name sets her apart from the ordinary creatures, pointing to her individuality. She repeats it to herself several times. Lucy. She likes the sound of it. The main character is pleased himself. He announces that her name will become a symbol of a new beginning. Halbert, to his partner's horror, adds that it's time for the gnome to start fighting on her own. Lucy believes that the MC is a real monster and no affection will stop him. She pulls him by the collar, and the main character rushes to calm her down, saying that he has already mastered the Knight's Oath skill and will be able to protect her from attacks. However, it turns out that until the protection zone ability is fully mastered, the chance of protection is only 70%. Lucy nervously crumples the fabric. After all, gnomes are a weak race that usually controls golems. She is overcome with memories. There is a hidden room in the dungeon where the orc nest is located. Inside it is a huge cage. Players are imprisoned there, all covered in scratches and bruises. They don't even have a shred of clothing. A blonde girl sits hugging her knees at the very bars. She is lost in bitter thoughts about her past. She managed to leave the village, become an adventurer, and her affairs were going quite well. But one day, her companions betrayed her, using her as bait for the orcs. No matter how much she begged her teammates to come back, they didn't even turn around. The girl sobs. She was afraid that the orcs would dishonor her. Someone's war cry distracts the girl from her fears and worries. The captive realizes with confusion that it is a human voice. The orcs jump up from their seats and rush toward the sound, growling viciously. The girl hears footsteps approaching. She looks up in surprise. In the distance, she notices a silhouette. She decides it is a human. Desperately rushing to the bars, the girl throws herself against them. She pleads pitifully to be saved before the monsters return. But to her horror, when the newcomer turns to her, the girl sees a terrifying, snarling face. The creature hastens to assure her that all the orcs have been killed and there is nothing to worry about. The girl cries out in fear, thinking that this is an even more terrifying monster. Trembling with fear, the unfortunate captive crawls away from the bars. She's frightened that this monster also speaks like a human. She believes it to be a chimera. Lucy thinks that her master should no longer wear this equipment. She reaches out from Halbert's shoulder and pulls on his fawn. The main character asks in confusion, "What's the matter?" Then he realizes that he has been wearing a mask all this time. Lucy turns away. The MC is so preoccupied with his quest for power that he forgets about everything else, including his appearance. Halbert realizes that he shouldn't scare people and pulls the mask off his face. The prisoners press themselves against the bars, and the blonde girl regains hope that the newcomer is human. But the main character's face frightens the orcs' victims even more. They recognize the Black Madman. He looks in surprise at the prisoners, trembling with fear. He decides that their reaction is caused by embarrassment, because they are completely naked. Halbert apologizes for his tactlessness. He reaches in his bag and pulls out some ordinary clothes. The MC passes the clothes through the bars, handing them out to the prisoners. The blonde girl thanks him, passing the clothes to her unfortunate companions. The main character asks them to let him know when they are dressed and turns away. The girl, clutching the clothes to her chest, realizes with surprise that the Black Madman is kinder than she thought. The captive timidly asks if Halbert really broke into the monster's lair to rescue the orcs' victims. Without turning around, he replies that no, he is not that kind of person. A little earlier, the main character began to explain to the gnome how the dungeon is structured. He tells his companion that it is divided into several levels. The partners are currently on the upper level, which is located on the first 10 floors and resembles a cave. The middle layer occupies the 11th to 30th floors and is a forest. The lower layer, stretching from the 31st to the 60th floors, is the sea. Each level has its own characteristics, and the deeper they go, the more difficult it becomes to move forward. MC adds that there are also special places where side events occur. This phrase means absolutely nothing to Gnome. Halbert approaches the wall of the dungeon, continuing to talk. To unlock additional events, you need to fulfill a number of specific conditions. However, now the main character is not in the game, which means that all these rules can be safely ignored. With a satisfied smile, the MC grabs his sword and uses the absolute power skill. He's going to break through the dungeon. Lucy is horrified by this idea. She is sure that it is pure madness because only a madman would think of demolishing a wall, sacrificing a whole bunch of health points. Besides, everyone knows that it is simply impossible to break anything in the dungeon. But while Lucy was getting upset, the main character had already done everything. To the gnome's amazement, a crack had already formed in the wall. MC's partner guesses that Halbert has discovered a secret passage leading to the monster's lair. Lucy, however, has no idea how Halbert figured out the location of the hideout. Standing in front of the crack made by, the main character notices that the monsters have been keeping their distance lately, and that the fragrant bait is worth the money. MC breaks into a predatory smile and announces that in that case, they have no choice but to attack themselves. Waving his weapon, Halbert warns the orcs that he is coming for them. With a grim look, Lucy clings tightly to the MC's bag. The monsters are surprised to find that someone is about to attack them. They decide that only a complete madman would dare to do such a thing. Then they notice the dwarf dangling from the fabric and wonder if this is a test of the new golem. Lucy understands their language and informs the orcs of this. She adds that Halbert is most likely human and that she is now his slave. The monsters point at her and laugh, mockingly saying that this is the nature of slaves of the earth. The main character looks at the laughing orcs in bewilderment. Unfortunately for the latter, their laughter is the last thing they will ever do. The MC says that although he does not know what made the monsters laugh so much, he can now at least see a breach. He uses the first sword technique. The orcs stop laughing and try to stop Halbert, but it is too late. With a wide swing, the main character cuts through the monsters' bodies. Standing in front of the orcs' corpses, the MC wonders why the monsters made such a fuss, but didn't even try to attack him. He decides that they just wanted to scare him. However, to the dwarf's surprise, the main character notices that there are still too many enemies. Lucy can't believe what she's hearing. Usually, Halbert's common sense never stops him. If he sees monsters, he is usually ready to fight, shouting that he has found excellent material for experiments. The main character continues, adding that the gnome needs to master the hunter class. This is when Lucy discovers the reason for Halbert's doubts. He is afraid that because the monsters are all the same type, the level will not increase. He is frustrated at missing out on all the experience points, but he will have to leave this place. Then the main character has a sudden thought. He fears that the orcs may surround his companions as they retreat. While pondering this, Halbert decapitates another monster. The MC notes with concern that the passage in the cave is too narrow for such an abundance of monsters. He decides to put an end to his doubts and deliberations and use his usual method, which has never failed him. The main character turns to his enemies, his eyes flashing with dangerous fire. He is going to kill everyone who dares to come out, and as quickly as possible. The orcs break out in a cold sweat when they meet the gaze of the formidable Halbert. Piercing another monster with his sword, the main character is surprised to find that he seems to have just defeated his last enemy. The MC pulls his weapon out of the defeated orc's body. Then he notices a chest and cries out excitedly. Pointing at it with his blade, Halbert orders the dwarf to quickly deal with the traps. Lucy obediently jumps down from her seat. The main character reasons that even though there is only one chest in a battle with a whole group of monsters, the chance of getting a rare item increases. When the dwarf is about to land on the chest, Halbert thoughtfully adds that this makes the traps much more difficult. Inside, his partner is shocked. She can't believe that the MC has only just told her this. Then the chest flashes brightly. Lucy realizes that the disarming attempt has failed. She anxiously checks herself for injuries, but finds that she is fine. The main character informs her that it was a trap called anti-magic. Raising his index finger emphatically, he explains that this type does not work on those who do not possess magic. Halbert adds with a cheerful smile that if the gnome had even a drop of magic, Lucy would have died instantly. He happily notes that even though she completely failed to neutralize it, she was very lucky. Mentally, the gnome screams in horror, although outwardly her face remains as immobile and impassive as ever. She is sure that the main character is deliberately mocking her. Lucy hopes that he will no longer send her to deal with such traps. Moreover, the gnome still does not have the equipment to increase the chance of successful disarming. However, the main character doesn't care about her worries, which he is unaware of anyway. He hurriedly runs up to the chest and eagerly looks inside. Lucy wonders to herself if the MC hates her that much. Meanwhile, he takes out the fairy wings. Halbert is extremely pleased with his find. He has obtained a rare item that, when equipped, gives a permanent levitation effect and allows him to fly. He gives the wings to the gnome, offering her to use them. She gasps, but her gloomy mood improves slightly. She is happy to get a rare item and won't even object if it continues to be so. But then Lucy remembers that she is a slave, which means that such fines are not appropriate for her status. She crosses her trembling arms, showing that she refuses. Halbert adds that with increased mobility, the gnome will finally become a full-fledged combat unit. The main character himself presses the wings against his companion's back, even though she protests that everything is being done by force and against her will. Halbert watches with admiration as the rare item shrinks on its own, adjusting to the height of its owner. MC still can't get used to this, and at the same time, he thinks about the law of conservation of mass. Turning her head, Lucy glances gloomily at her acquisition and, pushing off from a main character's shoulder, hangs in the air. Cursing silently, the dwarf wonders if they will really make her fight. Halbert watches her flight with a broad smile. He innocently compares her to a fairy because of her small stature and fragile physique. Lucy waves her arms indignantly. She doesn't like such comparisons. She doesn't think that some bug can be on a par with her. The main character is surprised to note that he actually wanted to compliment her, but she doesn't seem to like it. But then he remembers that in this world, fairies are nasty creatures with pretty faces but disgusting personalities, and he apologizes. Cheerfully raising his fist in the air, Halbert suggests continuing to explore the monster's lair, even if it means enduring the unbearable stench in the air. They still have to get rid of the remaining enemies, and, for this, the main character wants to use the mask. Of course, it is inferior to his current equipment in terms of protection, but it gives a bonus to attack. After listening to Halbert's story, the blonde companion, wrapping herself tightly in her clothes, says that she understands everything. However, she still cannot believe that someone would decide to invade the monster's lair of their own free will. The girl is convinced that the main character is truly terrifying. The main character asks if she can tell him anything about the overall situation. Shuddering and smiling tensely, the former captive agrees and begins her explanation. All the other victims of the orcs, except for her, try to resist the monsters in some way, so their health is almost at zero. The poor things can't even move properly. However, no one died, and the monsters did not have time to take advantage of them. Halbert replies that he is glad he managed to come to the rescue in time. The MC asks everyone to step back a little so that he could destroy the cage. The main character once again resorts to a technique called Absolute Sword. One strike, and only unpleasant memories remain of the prison. The blonde girl is puzzled as to how Halbert decided to use this skill. It takes away a huge amount of health points. It's simply suicide. Nevertheless, the main character has a smile on his face. He urges the prisoners to quickly get out of the dungeon. MC takes out the escape crystal and orders the orcs' victims to come closer so that they can be transported with him. The blonde girl asks again, confused. Stammering, she asks if Halbert is really willing to spend such an expensive item on his former captives. He replies that he is acting like any normal person would and asks her not to question his actions. To himself, he adds that he had already planned to return with the help of the crystal. Clutching the object tightly, MC mentally admits that he did not visit the lair until he had gathered enough strength. He did not care about the monster's victims at all, because Halbert is a typical egoist. The captives, whom he had actually intended to abandon, were simply lucky to survive. The main character understands perfectly well that this is hypocrisy. Stopping to think about it, he uses the crystal and announces that they are returning. Halbert and the adventurers he rescued arrive at the Travelers Guild building. The employee behind the counter informs the main character that the circumstances under which he rescued the prisoners have been taken into account. She asks what he intends to do with these people. The main character asks again in confusion, not understanding what the employee means. She explains that the adventurers have been missing for too long and are now considered dead. In addition, the former captives have no documents to prove their identity. Halbert tentatively suggests re-registering the rescued people with the guild. The employee replies that the adventurers now belong to the MC. One of the rescued girls takes off her clothes and coquettishly calls out to Halbert. She is ready to offer herself to the main character if he frees her. He turns to her and refuses sharply. He knows perfectly well that if he gives in to such behavior in the game, it will inevitably end badly. The embarrassed captive, in turn, is ready to serve Halbert, but he stops him, repeating that he doesn't need anything like that. The blonde girl promises to wash the robes and return them to the MC, but he smiles and tells her to leave them to the prisoners. He explains that he has no intention of wearing clothes that other people have worn on their naked bodies. Sighing, Halbert announces that he is relinquishing his ownership rights to the rescued adventurers. He adds that they should re-register with the guild on their own. Overjoyed, they rush to embrace each other. The main character asks the employee if this is permissible, and she stammers, confirming the legality of the decision. The blonde girl gratefully presses her hands to her chest. She admires the fact that Halbert not only rescued the captives from their orc lair, but also freed them from slavery completely free of charge. Even the clothes that the MC gave them cost money, and not a small amount. The girl can't even find the words to describe the main character. Suddenly, the joy disappears from her face. She is convinced that such kindness is simply impossible, and this behavior is very suspicious even for a simpleton like her. The girl cautiously glances at Halbert, who is talking to the former captives. She reminds herself that she is standing before the Black Madman himself, and she is afraid to even imagine what he will ask for in return for her rescue. The girl decides not to wait for something bad to happen and quietly escape during the night. The other adventurers who were rescued by the MC did the same. Although not without surprises, Halbert and Lucy successfully completed the side event called Orc Lair. The main character was able to level up his knight class and even gained a useful ability. Thanks to the wings he found, the dwarf gained more mobility and can now fight to his full potential. Now the companions are heading straight for the boss, known as the Guardian. In order to get to his room, they had to descend to the 10th level of the dungeon. The companions stand before the gates. Halbert suggests going in. He believes there is no point in postponing the battle with the intermediate boss. Lucy is glad they finally made it. So many events have happened in her life recently that the dwarf has already begun to forget about her race. The main character turns to his partner, sitting on his shoulder, and smiles affectionately. He thinks she likes these levels. MC just hopes she doesn't get too attached. Something catches Halbert's attention. Turning around, he discovers 3 adventurers trying to hide behind a column. The MC asks what's going on, and the travelers leave their hiding place. A bald man covered in scars laughs nervously and asks them to ignore them. His companion in black glasses agrees and promises that they won't bother the main character. The third adventurer with a mohawk winks and adds that they'll just be spectators. The words of the small team mean nothing to Halbert. He wonders who these 3 hooligans are. After thinking for a moment, the main character realizes that the adventurers are going to wait for the MC to defeat the boss and then run to the middle levels. He notes that he doesn't mind the trio's presence, but they shouldn't try to take the loot he will get. Here, Halbert meaningfully reaches for his sword. The men's faces stretch, and the trio breaks out in a cold sweat. With his eyes flashing wildly, the main character takes the weapon out of its sheath and demonstrates a technique called triple strike. After that, he smiles sweetly and asks if everything is clear to the adventurers. The bald man, with a tense smile, says that he thought Halbert would immediately understand their intention. He notes to himself that the MC used Absolute Sword 3 times in a row and wasn't even bothered by the huge health cost. The adventurer in black glasses hastily adds that they all understand and just want to go downstairs. He is convinced that the main character is a real madman, since he decided to spend health points on an act of intimidation. Pressing his hand to his heart as a sign of honesty, the traveler with a mohawk announces that their team is not interested in the loot at all, because they won't even be able to use it. He is finally convinced that the MC is a real madman, and even manages to smile while in a half-dead state. Lucy, with a dismissive sigh, thinks that Halbert has no reason to approach the boss with so little health. However, he is tempted by the opportunity to obtain a very useful weapon after defeating the Guardian. The main character passionately wants to get the Spear of Resentment, which he needs so much. It is a truly terrifying item, capable of inflicting a whole bunch of debuffs on the enemy. Of course, Halbert knows perfectly well that this spear can later be obtained from chests and monsters. However, it definitely drops from the boss. The only thing that upsets the main characters is the inability to reset the dungeon to replay the Guardian boss. MC mentally calls on the goddess of luck to help him. Patting himself on the cheeks, Halbert announces that there is no other way out and prepares for battle. Lucy even supports him, waving flags. The gnome has nothing else to do anyway, so he might as well cheer on the main character. Halbert pushes the creaky doors, and they slowly give way. A summoning seal flashes in the room. From it emerges a boss armed with a spear. Its sharp tip glitters in the bright light. The companions are confronted by the guardian of the upper floors, the traitor knight. Just as the boss is about to say something, the main character impatiently interrupts him. The enemy is right in front of him, and he has no intention of listening to the MC's silly speeches or waiting any longer. Halbert decides to explain everything in detail to the gnome. He knows that the knight's only attack skill is Shield of Despair. The strength of the attack depends on defense. Lucy waves him off because she didn't ask him to tell her anything. However, the main character continues. After using Absolute Sword, the MC will be on the verge of death, and therefore his life against death ability will activate, doubling his base defense. In addition, Halbert has strengthened his armor to the maximum, thus tripling his defense. With burning eyes and a predatory smile, the main character rushes into the attack. He strikes the boss with his shield. The MC adds that this is not the end and pushes off from the floor. The main character says that if you use 2 shields at once, your defense will be doubled, which means the damage will also be doubled. Halbert announces that the total damage already exceeds the boss's health, and instant death awaits him. The guard literally falls apart before their eyes. The stunned trio of adventurers cannot hold back their cries. Lucy looks back at them with a satisfied smile. She's already used to such reactions to MC. He looks at the disappearing boss, wondering whether the spear will fall or not. Halbert stares blankly at the empty floor where nothing remains. He lets out a heart-wrenching cry, realizing that he will not get the weapon he so desired. The main character falls to the ground, pounding his fists. He howls desperately from the disappointment that has befallen him. Lucy hovers over the MC, thinking that anything can happen. Continuing to beat his hands on the floor, Halbert curses his luck because there will be no other chance to defeat the boss. A bald man timidly approaches the main character, who is wallowing in his grief, and gently asks if everything is okay. He apologizes for disturbing him. He reminds him that it would be best to open the door to the middle layer as quickly as possible, otherwise the boss may resurrect. The main character jumps up from the floor and demands an immediate repeat. His interlocutor, stuttering heavily, asks for clarification. With a crazy smile, Halbert looms over the bald adventurer. He asks for more details about the resurrection of the guard. Lucy sighs, thinking disappointedly, why did the man even say that? The trio eagerly explains to the main character that if someone dies in this place, they're swallowed up by the dungeon. However, the gatekeeper can be resurrected indefinitely. The man with the mohawk adds that there are rumors that the boss will be resurrected after a while if there is someone in the room who has not yet defeated the traitor knight. Halbert finds this quite logical, because if one person defeats the guard, everyone else can simply slip past him. With a smirk, the main character announces that he has a proposal for the trio of adventurers. They hesitate, but agree without hesitation. The traitor knight is outraged that he was defeated as soon as he stepped off the summoning seal. For a second, he thinks about what happened, but he immediately dismisses the thought. After all, the boss will no longer have to fight the main hero. The guard only destroys enemies for the sake of his mistress. But then, to the traitor knight's amazement, the summons is repeated. He notices the familiar silhouettes of people he has seen twice already today. However, this does not upset the boss. He is going to unleash all his pent-up anger on the heads of these weaklings who have no place in this dungeon. The guard notices that the trio of adventurers are looking intently at something. He does not have time to understand what has caught their attention. Halbert plunges his sword into the boss's neck. Along the way, the MC explains that a blow to the back is considered a surprise attack and always counts as a critical hit, meaning a 100% chance of hitting. The body of the defeated guard crashes to the floor, and the main character lands nimbly on his feet, immediately looking eagerly at the disappearing boss. Once again, his hopes are dashed. The weapon does not drop, and Halbert turns away in annoyance. The MC is about to fight the guard again. This happens 3 more times. The main character uses the Shield of Despair, defeats the boss, but the spear still does not appear. An adventurer in black glasses approaches Halbert. He suggests taking pity on the guard and leaving him alone. The MC, boiling with rage, informs them that if the trio wants to get to the middle layer they should shut up and not interfere. They obediently agree. Lucy, flying nearby, notices that they would probably prefer to get home rather than go to the next levels. The bald man despairs. He wishes he could punch his past self, who decided he could outsmart the blackest madman. Halbert's battle cries can be heard from afar. Once again, the weapon does not appear. The main character believes that since the spear is called the Spear of Resentment, in order for it to drop, the boss must die, offended. Lucy grimaces, thinking that the MC has strange logic. In subsequent battles with the traitor knight, Halbert uses various techniques: Junk Crush, Galician Explosion, and, of course, Psycho Crusher. All of the MC's attacks, however, are crowned with unwavering success. The boss falls apart once again. He still can't understand what kind of guy this is. The traitor knight is sure that MC is just mocking him. This fact, however, makes it even more offensive to lose to such a nobody. The guardian wonders whether divine punishment has befallen him. After all, he, a holy knight, abandoned his comrades, turning his back on them. And he betrayed those who shared his high ideals. The boss bitterly calls himself a fool, for he has lost not only his friends, but also the only one who was truly dear to him. Halbert, meanwhile, celebrates his victory. Luck has smiled on him after all, and the long-awaited spear of resentment has finally deigned to fall. The main character gently holds the coveted weapon and caresses it. The bald man timidly calls out to him. He nervously remarks that it seems he and his companions are no longer needed. A satisfied Halbert turns around and says that there is still a little work left to do. He still needs a second spear for the duel style. The adventurers let out a mournful cry, realizing that they are stuck here for a long time to come. The main character watches their reaction in bewilderment. Then he joyfully exclaims that he understands everything. Halbert thinks that now the trio wants their share for their help. The men try to explain plaintively that this is not the case at all, but the MC, of course, is not going to listen to them. The unfortunate guard curses the god who sent such punishment upon him with his last words. A little earlier, someone looks closely at the screen, which shows the boss torn to pieces. The viewer zooms in on Halbert fighting with both shields. The observer turns off the monitor. He cannot believe that the main character has easily defeated the traitor knight himself. Now all hope rests on the fairy people. These creatures rule the middle layer, and dealing with them is no easy task. The girl who is watching the screen jumps up from her seat. She needs to hurry while the winged people are holding Halbert back. During this time, the girl must reconfigure the system. With a confident smile on her face, she mentally addresses the Black Madman. The girl believes that at this moment, the main character's journey will end. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Write your feedback in the comments. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. See you soon.